I'm going to give you guys what I believe to be the spiciest tech cards for 2023 GOAT format. These are cards that no one is playing, but that I think are going to be viable as improvements to the top GOAT format decks. And now I know a lot of people always claim that GOAT format is solved and all the good stuff has been found out already, but experience has always taught me that that's never really the case. I know, for example, that a lot of people ended up being surprised by how strong cards like Golem Sentry and Hysteric Fairy turned out to be in 2022. So if you want to get ahead of the meta and find out what the next innovations are going to be for GOAT format, then this video is a great place to start. Welcome to GOAT Duels, I'm ACP. Now let's get started with the first tech card that I want to highlight, which is Solemn Wishes. Now, Solemn Wishes gains a bunch of life points, and when I'm evaluating cards in the context of really any trading card game, what I'm always thinking about is how much value does this card need to get me in order for it to be worth playing? Now, obviously with Solemn Wishes, that value is life points, and Solemn Wishes can gain you a bunch of life points. We're talking 3,000, 4,000 life points in one game, which is quite a lot, and can be a game decider not only against burn decks, but also when you're going into time. I say this because I know that most IRL GOAT format tournaments are going to have timed rounds, and even lately, a few online tournaments have had timed rounds as well. Now, as far as the strength of Solemn Wishes goes, there are 2 points that I want to highlight. The first is that Solemn Wishes doesn't just gain you 500 a turn. It gains you that 500 anytime you draw a card, and what we're noticing is that a lot of decks in the meta right now are playing Upstart Goblin, Jar of Greed, Dekochi. Of course, you've got Pot and Graceful, maybe Card Destruction, and then you've got your Magician of Faiths to get back that Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, and so on. So Solemn Wishes, you could easily average maybe 750 life a turn with this card, right? If you're drawing an extra card every other turn, that's what you're going to get. And that can be quite strong against some burn decks. Now, I know that over the past couple of years, the main burn deck that people have been playing is Panda Burn. And as far as burn decks go in GOAT format, I kind of put them into 2 categories. One focuses more on burst damage in the sense that it kind of deals their damage in chunks. And then the other is kind of slower burn where they're dealing maybe 500, 1,000 every turn. And Solemn Wishes, I think it can be good against the bursty burn decks, the ones that focus more on Ojama Trio and Just Desserts. Yeah, it can be okay against them, but it really shines against the slower burn decks. So I'm talking about burn decks that rely on cards like Nightmare Wheel, Wave Motion Cannon, Chain Energy in particular. Now, Chain Energy has been getting a bit more popular in GOAT format as of late, and Solemn Wishes is possibly the best counter to Chain Energy in the game. Yeah, of course you could just kill their Chain Energy with Dust Tornado, Mobius, and that sort of thing, but even better is using their Chain Energy against them. And when they have a Chain Energy in play and you have a Solemn Wishes, it creates a very interesting dynamic where the first card that you play every turn is basically going to be free, but theirs isn't, right? So what you can do is just go, hey, I'm going to play whatever it is. My one card, your one card for the turn, it might even be Dekochi, right? So you pay 500, set that Dekochi, you gained 500 for your turn. Then when you flip that Dekochi, you gain another 500. And yeah, your opponent can set their Desk Koalas and so on, but, it's going to cost them life points to do so. You can hopefully play around that and that sort of thing. And of course, Solemn Wishes, it is going to just cancel out the 500 that they're dealing you every turn with Nightmare Wheel. So it trades well with a lot of the more gradual burn cards in the format. And like I said, also great in time. Now, I know some people might be saying, yeah, Solemn Wishes seems like it's good against burn. We've already got other cards that are good against burn. We've got Mystic Walk, we've got Hysteric Fairy, we've got Mobius, Jinzo, Royal Decree, that sort of thing. And yeah, that is true, but obviously, depending on the deck that you're playing and depending on what you expect the meta to be, those might not be the best options for you. So the second main point that I want to highlight is when burn is popular, when it's something that people are trying to counter, you notice that the top players typically use a mix of different cards against burn, right? So it's not just Mystic Walk, it might be Mystic Walk plus Mobius. It's not just Hysteric Fairy, it might be Hysteric Fairy, Royal Decree. Or maybe they throw some Dust Tornadoes in their side and that sort of thing. So, yeah, Mystic Walk's a very good card, but just siding 2 Mystic Walks, it will help you in that matchup, but you often want a little something extra if you want that matchup to be really favorable. So, maybe you're playing a deck with a lot of traps, you don't want to side Royal Decree, but you notice, I'm playing 3 Jar Greeds, I'm playing 2 Upstart Goblins, then maybe the configuration that you go for against burn is, hey, I'm going to try 2 Mystic Walks, 2 Solemn Wishes. I think something like that could work pretty well. And I even think that if you have multiple Solemn Wishes in play, most burn decks just cannot beat you because you're just gaining 1,000 life every turn, and it's just going to be so hard for them to do more than that. So I think Solemn Wishes is a really underexplored card that I would like to see played in 2023. The second tech card on our list is one that's a bit of a mild on the spice level. It's a card that we all know, but a card that I still think is very underplayed, and that card is Brain Control. Now, Brain Control does 2 things. The first is that we can get value with it by taking their monster, tributing it for something like a Monarch, and yes, Brain Control, of course, is very good in Monarchs. The other thing that we can do is that we can just take their monster and use it to attack our opponent for game. And I think both of those uses have a lot of potential right now. And the reason why is, there's a couple of reasons. One, I think Brain Control is just an all-around really good card against Warriors. Now, I know that, people, when they're thinking about siding removal versus Warriors, they often think of Sakuretsu Armor, Smashing Ground, that sort of thing. Those cards are good for sure, but in my opinion, they're a little bit telegraphed. They aren't necessarily cards that will win you the game by themselves. They're not really going to turn around a game. They just sort of make your matchup slightly better. Whereas I think Brain Control is a card that your opponent is a lot less likely to expect, and one that has a much higher ceiling in that matchup. So if we look at Warriors, they often play cards that have the same attack stats. So they might have like a Kaiku and a Ninja Grandmaster in play, or maybe even just 2 Kaikus. And of course, going, hey, Brain Control, I'm going to take one, crash into the other. Great play. Another great play, your opponent might play Donslug, attack you directly. And, assuming their Donslug doesn't discard your Brain Control, you can just take that Donslug back, hit it with them again, discard a card, and, hopefully have some sort of good follow-up to that. However, one thing that I like about Brain Control in the Warrior matchup is some people versus Warriors, they do try to side some sort of big monsters like Mobius or Jinzo, and those cards could be a little high risk, high reward, right? Because, if you get off a really juicy Mobius against Warriors, that's great, but you have to actually have the tribute for it. And what I like is, pairing Mobius with Brain Control as a side for Warriors, and then you kind of have 2 cards that are individually pretty strong, but can also be good together. And the other thing, of course, is that Warriors does play 3 Solemn Judgment, and, you can sort of bait out those Solemns, get their life points kind of low, and go, hey, guess what? I've got Brain Control and another monster to attack you for game. So I've been liking Brain Control a lot as a tech, in Goat Control. If you watch my deck profile in Goat Control, I did main deck 1 Brain Control. That was with 2 Metamorphosis, 2 Tribute Monsters, and also 2 Creature Swaps. So another good combo that we can do with Brain Control is if our opponent has 2 monsters, we can Brain Control 1, Creature Swap it to our opponent, take the other one, keep that card permanently. Not necessarily amazing per se, but it is solid, and it is something that we can do with Brain Control. Brain Control, I think, is also a pretty decent card against Chaos for a couple of reasons. The obvious one is, we can take their BLS or their Chaos Sorcerer and banish itself. And remember that versus Chaos, banishing a monster is a lot better than destroying it. So we definitely like that we can do that. And something else that I want to point out is, Brain Control, there are counters to it. The main counter for Brain Control is Book of Moon, but a lot of people are just not playing that right now. Like, you see 0 to 1 Book of Moon being very common, and, I'm always thinking about cards not so much in a vacuum, but how they perform against the meta. And as long as the meta doesn't have very many copies of Book of Moon, Brain Control does go up in value. Additionally, if people aren't playing a lot of copies of Scapegoat, it's more likely that we'll be able to Brain Control someone's monster and attack for game. So overall, I like Brain Control as a main deck card in Goat Control. I also like Brain Control as a side deck in Chaos decks for that Warrior matchup. Heck, you could even main it. I just think this is one of those cards that enough people haven't tried, and I think if more people tried it, we would see a lot more Brain Controls in the meta. The next tech card on our list is a pretty spicy side deck card, and that is Chain Disappearance. So when I side in GOAT format, I like to have cards that are very high impact, even if they might be a little narrow for very specific matchups. And Chain Disappearance is one of those cards. I think Chain Disappearance is a great card against decks like Goat Control or Chaos Control, really just any deck that plays Goat's meta. I don't think it's very good against much else. However, it definitely is good in that specific matchup. Now, I know we have cards like King Tiger Wangu and Azura Priest that are also good in that matchup, but maybe you can't play something like King Tiger because it conflicts with your own deck, or maybe you just want a trap to side in rather than a monster. In that case, I think Chain Disappearance is a great choice. So Chain Disappearance does really two main things, but it has a few other niche uses. The first is that you could just clear a field full of goats, right? I mean, being able to deal with all 4 goats with just one card in the battle phase, that's pretty strong, right? So maybe you're attacking it directly with a Donzlug, your opponent activates Scapegoat, you use Chain Disappearance, clear the goats, hit directly with your Donzlug. Pretty basic play that you can do. However, I think the more powerful play is if you use it on Thousand-Eyes Restrict. So most Goat Control decks right now, they are playing 3 copies of Metamorphosis. Some, maybe only play 2. But either way, using Chain Disappearance on a Metamorphosis for Thousand-Eyes Restrict is a massive power play. It's going to banish all of those Thousand-Eyes Restricts, make sure you don't have to deal with those for the rest of the game, and pretty much turn those additional copies of Metamorphosis into near bricks. Yes, you might be able to get a bit of utility out of using it on your Blackluster Soldier or your Zaborg or something like that. But, 90% of the reason you play this card is for Thousand Eyes Restrict. So shutting down all those Thousand Eyes can be really strong. In addition, Chain Disappearance also can banish Sanguine and occasionally even Sinister Serpent in a way that your opponent isn't going to expect. So in some of the grindier matches of GOAT format, you do have people just summoning Sinister, poking directly, knowing, hey, what's the worst that can happen, right? What are they going to do? Mirror Force my Sinister Serpent? The answer is no, but, if your opponent goes for that Sinister poke and you have the Chain Disappearance, that is absolutely huge. It's going to get rid of that Sinister for the whole game. Don't have to worry about that anymore. The other thing that you can do, and you got to make sure you set this up right, but if your opponent goes for a Sinister Torrential play, or even a, Sanguine Torrential play, the way that works is, they summon the Sinister, they will flip over their Torrential, and then you can chain Disappearance to their Torrential, right? Because it's still all in response to the summon of that Sinister. So your Chain Disappearance will resolve first, banish the Sinister, Torrential will resolve, clear the board. That's how that works. And yeah, just can be pretty good against Sanguine too, right? A lot of people like to actually summon their Sanguine rather than set it because they're worried about Nobleman a crossout. But if you have Chain Disappearance, you can still banish the Sanguine anyway, kind of put your opponent in that awkward 50-50. So if you're looking for a trap that's good against those Goats meta decks, Chain Disappearance is number 1 on my list. It is a little narrow, but I think it is a card that is very underplayed and definitely has potential to be good in a lot of side decks in GOAT format. Last but not least, my number 1 tech card of 2023. This one is a Ghost Chili Pepper on the spice level. It is Time Wizard. Okay, now hear me out. What do I like about Time Wizard? Well, First things first, it's a light monster. We love that. In GOAT format, if a monster's light, it automatically becomes like twice as playable, right? Everyone's always looking for the next hot light monster, right? You know, you want to play your 3 Thunder Dragons, you want to play your Magician of Faith, but often you want to find another light monster that's good too, right? You don't want to get too greedy. And I think Time Wizard can be that light monster. So, 2 major points that I want to make. First, this card actually, I think, has natural synergy with Chaos, right? Chaos is generally played as, a control deck. You want removal. Time Wizard is removal. It can kill things that are face up, face down. But, of course, there's the downside. It's a 50-50. You get it wrong, it's going to kill your own board. However, Chaos decks are fine with that too, right? Because the idea is you've got, say, a Time Wizard and a Chaos Sorcerer. Your opponent has a monster. You go Time Wizard, activate the effect. Of course, you're hoping you call it right, but if you call it wrong, your Time Wizard dies. Oh, but now I've got this light in my grave. I can banish that for Chaos Sorcerer. Get rid of their monster anyway. So, Time Wizard, I think, yeah, it's, a little high variance, but I think you can use that to your advantage if you're a smart player. You can kind of put yourself in a win-win situation where either you're going to get a free Raigeki or you're going to get a light monster in your grave, right? Why is Thunder Dragon so good? It's because it's a light monster that is easy to put in your grave. Time Wizard is kind of the same thing. But what I think really puts it over the top is it is a level 2 spellcaster, and that matters because of Apprentice Magician. Apprentice Magician, it's a card that we've seen a teensy bit in GOAT format. We've seen some top deck lists that were playing Apprentice Magician. Often it's only one Apprentice Magician, sometimes you got the second one, but Apprentice Magician kind of has a problem. You love the card because it can search Magician of Faith, but Magician of Faith ends up being banished a lot, right? Because of all the Nobleman of Crossouts flying around. So Apprentice Magician would be great in a Chaos deck because it's this dark monster that searches a light, but half the time you can't even get that light. So you get stuck playing Old Vindictive Magician, maybe even throw in like a hand of Neftis or something. But, a lot of people, I think, had the attitude that, Apprentice Magician, it's this good card, but if things don't go your way, there's not really anything great to search. But Time Wizard, I think, can fill that role as being that alternate light monster that Apprentice Magician can search, which is really nice. So I think something that Chaos players could try out is, maybe instead of Gravekeeper Spies, you could go for the double Apprentice, the one Time Wizard, maybe even throw in an Old Vindictive there. So you got 2 Apprentice Magicians with 4 cards to search out, 2 Magician of Faith, 1 Time Wizard, 1 Old Vindictive. I think that's pretty good, and I think that by going with that configuration instead of Gravekeeper Spy, it does a couple of things. One, you have a lot more outs to Kaiku, right? Because Apprentice Magician can search out and out. Either it's going to be the Old Vindictive or the Time Wizard. Additionally, you are a little better against something like Mind Control, right? If your opponent Mind Controls your Apprentice Magician, that's a lot better for you than if they Mind Control your set Gravekeeper Spy, flip it up, get their own Gravekeeper Spy. So I think that's something that is worth trying out. I don't think I've been seeing anyone try Time Wizard in GOAT format in any sort of like serious capacity. But like I said, I think it's a good card. It's a light. It has potential to be high impact. And yes, it is a chance-based card, but I think in Yu-Gi-Oh! In particular, chance-based cards are very underrated. Keep in mind, I was the person who made top cut at a YCS with Cup of Ace in my deck. So, maybe luck has been a little more on my side than most. But, if you have a game where you're very behind, right? Maybe you think you have only a 10% or a 20% chance to win. Time Wizard offering you a 50% chance to maybe turn the game around all of a sudden starts seeming very appealing. So I think in a way, Time Wizard could kind of function a lot like Morphing Jar in the sense that if you're already winning, you just don't play it. But then if you're losing, you kind of have it as this, hey, maybe I can get out of jail free kind of option. And like I said, it's a light monster. It's searchable. We love that. So give it a shot. Let me know if Time Wizard happens to work for you, because I think there is a ton of potential there. So that's it, everyone. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, then maybe you should go watch this one here.